Notice is hereby given of a regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday, November 7, 2012, in the boardroom of the Administration Building, 302 Elm Street in Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business which may properly come before the board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975 entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Friday, November 21, 2012, caused to be posted in the office of the Board of Education located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, the Town Clerk of Westfield, the Alternative Press, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of the meeting. Do roll call.
Rich Matesic.
Here.
Ann Carey. Here. Jane Clancy.
Here.
Mark Friedman.
Here.
Roseanne Kerstead.
Here.
Ginny Lights.
Here.
Gretchen Oleg.
Here.
Mitch Slater.
Here. Ginny, could you lead us in the flag salute, please?
Absolutely. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcements? Gretchen, anything down your end?
I do. I have one. Congratulations to Westfield High School senior Jeff Marino, who I think is here, and sophomore Jason Prevalon, who won the annual Unico Essay Contest, which highlights the accomplishments of Italian Americans. Jeff wrote about Enrico Fermi, who won a Nobel Prize in Physics in 1937, and Jason's essay focused on Frank Sinatra, who received over 20 musical awards in his career and many humanitarian honors as well. So congratulations to both Jeff and Jason.
So this is from the intermediate schools. A rescheduled Veterans Day ceremony was held at Roosevelt Intermediate School on November 19th. Music was provided by the Sharps and Flats, the 8th grade chorus, and the 8th grade band. Students Alexandra Jackman, Evan Gruters, and Abby Rothenberg addressed the student body and guests describing what Veterans Day meant to them. Social studies teacher Brian Beath presented the Heroes Among Us Award to guest speaker and veteran Patrick Boyer. Mr. Boyer credited his decision to enter the military to his 7th grade teacher, a veteran who provided him with inspiration.
And in fine arts, the Westfield High School performance of the comedy A Little Hotel on the Side will be performed Thursday, November 29th at 4 p.m. and Friday, November 30th and Saturday, December 1st at 7:30 p.m. It is a French farce, if you haven't heard of it. Come enjoy the show and support our talented cast and crew. Also, winter concerts begin December 5th with the Westfield High School Band and end December 21st. Look for the schedule on the Fine Arts website.
Thank you.
Bond referendum. Just a reminder that the bond referendum vote for the roof replacements and repairs on all of our buildings will take place on Tuesday, December 11th. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Please remember to vote. Information about the bond is available at www.westfieldnjk12.org/roof bond. We will hear more about the bond under tonight's facilities report.
Mitch?
Nothing.
Jane? Ginny?
I do. Athletics. Congratulations to Westfield High School's gymnastics team and boys cross-country team who both placed second in their group's state sectional championship. Congratulations to the following students who have committed to attend colleges and universities as student athletes in the fall of 2013. The girls' lacrosse players include Mariah Baker, who will attend the University of Cincinnati, Courtney Weiss, attending Dartmouth College, and Elizabeth Cusick, who has been accepted to Stanford University. Boys lacrosse players include Matthew Webb, who will attend Lafayette College, and Christian Bergdorf, who is going to the University of Denver. Lexi Bohr has signed her intent to play girls tennis at Boston College. Also, we just learned today that Carolyn Baldwin, a junior on the girls swimming team, was awarded Scholastic All-American by USA Swimming, a national scholastic governing organization. Congratulations to all of our student athletes.
And just in time for the holidays, the Westfield Ed Fund has produced a book all about Westfield and Westfield schools. 3 members of the Westfield Ed Fund have written a book that highlights each Westfield public school through a story about the Blue Devil, our town's mascot. It's a perfect gift for the holidays. It's for sale for $15 from the Ed Fund, and requests can be made to edfund@westfieldnj.com. It was written again by 3 of the people who are involved in the Ed Fund: Amy Seid, Claudia Andreski, and Erica Pavinsky. And I was thinking, I have read this through. It really is very cute. It not only talks about each school, but it also talks about some important parts of our town. Mentions the police chief, for example, and highlights a few areas in downtown: the fire department, Rialto. I was thinking just last week I attended the Westfield Athletic Hall of Fame dinner, and a lot of people go to that, and I happened to be seated next to someone who had graduated from Westfield High School in 1948. And he was telling me a great deal about his high school experience. I mean, it was very, very vivid what he had experienced in our high school. Actually, when I was reading this, he'll think I'm crazy, but I started to think of him. I thought he would love this book because he remembers the schools, and he would probably love something like that. He'd probably be a little surprised if I sent it to him. But it is a great book, and all the proceeds are going to the Ed Fund, and the Ed Fund does a lot of work helping support our teachers in this district and our students in this district. So please take advantage of that.
Thank you. The next Board of Education meeting will be held Tuesday, December 11th, during which time we will report on the outcome of the bond referendum. Please remember to vote on that day, December 11th, from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And with that, I have the pleasure this evening of honoring the Westfield High School Marching Band. The band has concluded the 2012 season with great distinction. Most recently, they competed in the A-Class Nationals in Annapolis, Maryland, where they placed 20th overall out of 49 bands across the country. In the New Jersey State Championships, they were awarded 8th place out of a total of 69 bands. And in their group competition, they came in 4th, also winning for Best Percussion. A special Cadets Award of Excellence was presented to the band in recognition of their creativity, performance, and overall effect. In earlier regional competitions, the marching band placed 1st in their group in the East Brunswick and Hillsborough competitions. In these, as well as the Piscataway competition, they also received special awards for being best in music, visual, percussion, and overall effect. The Westfield Board of Education is very proud of these students who, through hard work and many hours of practice, were recognized for their superior achievements. The members of the Westfield Marching Band are our seniors, Michael Aronson, Rob Cassie, Jonathan Clancy, Andrew Dugert, Maria Hershey, Liam Keller, Barry Knapp, Zoe Caruno, Jeffrey Marino, Eric Mikolauskas, Annalyn Tanella, Alex Ying, and our juniors are Geneva Gleason, David Gruskin, Samuel Kraus, and Matthew Nuzzo. We have certificates of congratulation for all those student leaders of the band who I have mentioned, some of whom are here with us tonight, as well as their directors. So what I'd like to do is go to the podium, and when I call your name, if you'd please come up to the podium and just accept your certificate. Liam Keller, who is a senior section leader. Congratulations. Come up and Jeff Marino, who is also a senior section leader. Geneva Gleason, the junior drum major. And Michael Aronson, the senior drum major. And Eric Mikalauskis, the marching band president for 2012. The board would also like to congratulate Assistant Band Director James Doyle, and Westfield's Marching Band Director Chris Vitale. I think Chris and some of the students have some interesting anecdotes to share with us.
Thank you very much. First, I just want to say thank you to the board and to Dr. Dolan for taking time this evening to recognize the great work of the marching band this year. It's really refreshing to work in a district that supports the arts in such a positive way. So I know Mr. Doyle and I, and I'm sure the students are, very thankful for your support in all of the arts, but in our case, music. And I thought in an evening where we're here thanking the students, I thought it would be great for the students to actually tell you a little bit about their season rather than it come from me. So I'm going to introduce them. They've already been introduced, but they're going to say a few words.
Hello, I'm Eric Mikalauskis, and I know you've already read the rest of the band, and we just wanted to take the time to say thank you again for taking the time to honor us this evening.
Hi, I'm Michael Aronson, the senior drum major, and I just wanted to share with you all a little bit more about in-depth to the successes of the band this season. This season we came in 10th for the 4A group in the Nationals competition in Annapolis and 20th overall. Really proud about that. And 4th in our group, 8th overall in states, as well as the Cadets Award of Excellence, which is only awarded to 6 bands in the state. Very proud of that as well. And some of the first place finishes that we've experienced in the past 6 years. So very proud of that. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Geneva Gleason. I'm junior drum major. This season we experienced quite a few hurdles, I guess you could call them, and both of which echoed our past season from last year as well, those being a hurricane and a snowstorm, which we got through, and I think Liam's going to talk about.
Hello, Liam. Thank you for honoring us tonight. I mean, the adversities, it was tough this year. Every year we seem to have a snowstorm right around Halloween, but this year we really came together as a band. We buckled down once we got back from the 6 days off from school, and we really just came back together, worked really hard. We made our times and schedules very flexible, and the product was a great show at Nationals and States. Jeff's going to talk to you about some of the community things we did.
Hi, I'm Jeff Marino. Yeah, it was, of all the years, this is definitely one where I felt the biggest sense of community from the band. We certainly got along really well together. We tried to get out to make our name heard a little. A lot of you saw us at Shaker Day, our fundraiser in September. We got out. We were part of the Halloween parade. You see us at all the football games. And it just felt like a really great season despite all these obstacles. It was definitely one that we'll all remember. So thanks.
Thank you.
And I wonder if I could just add one other thing, and that is, I was able to listen to an audio. Actually, Mr. Vitale posted it on the band website. An audio of a judge talking through as he was analyzing the work of the band in the competition. And in the beginning, it was just what you would imagine. I don't care whether you're talking about a judge for gymnastics or band or whatever. It was completely analytical. Okay, and this audio, he had posted this audio, and it talked about great use of side drums and something, great precision, whatever, very analytical. And then all of a sudden, the judge's voice changed. Now, while this was going on, you're hearing the band playing music, okay? So over his audio, you hear the band playing music. So they had just morphed from the end of a piece, and they went into, my description, they may correct me, but you heard these rather remote echoes of taps, remnants of taps, just little bits of taps. And it was marvelously performed. Utterly, I don't know if any of you were doing that, but just beautifully, sensitively, beautifully performed. It just sounded like echoes. And as that was happening, and as the band was also, I understand some were dropping to their knee on the field. I couldn't see that. I just had an audio. The voice of the judge completely changed, and he said, "Oh, wow!" And his voice caught, and he said, "You have a former Marine here, and I can't tell you how much this has touched me and how much this has touched others." Now, you don't hear judges in any sport or in music that change like that, or very rarely, but this group of students really made an impression, touched the souls of people with their performance, and truthfully that was one of the reasons why I wanted them to come, because that's what you try to do in the arts. You try to reach out and you try to touch, you try to create an emotion, and this group of students and their directors really did that this year. So thank you for doing that and for representing us so well.
Any more announcements?
I don't think so.
Okay. With that, I will recognize the public for agenda items only.
I would imagine some of the students may have some homework to do. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. All right. Seeing no one come to the podium, I would ask the board to approve the minutes of the board meeting held on November 13, 2012, and the private session minutes of November 13, 2012. Have a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Very good. With that, we will go to personnel. Jane?
I'd like to make a motion to ask for the board's approval of personnel items number 1 through 15.
Second.
Questions? Comments? Industrial? If we can vote. Rich Matesic?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kursted?
Yes.
Ginny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg? Yes. Mitch Slater?
Yes.
Thank you. That brings us to our facilities report. Jane?
And as Dr. Dolan and Mr. Matesic indicated earlier, there is a report on the district-wide roof replacement, which I will turn over to Ms. Sullivan.
Okay, thank you.
As you know, we are going, as been mentioned several times this evening, we have a bond referendum on December 11th. This report is similar to reports we've done previously with some minor changes. Okay, we're asking for a bond issuance of $13,600,000 for the roofs. Why are we asking for bonds? Bonds are the mechanism that the state provides school districts to fund capital projects. Because we have a 2% cap on our operating budget, it is very difficult to put large capital projects in the capital budget, in the operating budget, without reducing other areas and instructional areas. Therefore, the state allows us to issue bonds. The state in the past has given aid, state aid, for some capital projects that were funded by bonds. However, that hasn't been the case for the last several years. If in fact funding does become available going forward, we will certainly apply for that retroactively. If the bond is approved, we will pay back the bond over a period of 20 years, which is the estimated useful life of the roofs. And right now, interest rates are very low, which it makes it an opportune time for us to issue bonds. Why do we need the roofs, and what have we looked at as far as the roofs? What plans did we come up with? Well, these discussions have been taking place for quite a long time, since February or March. In fact, the board had, probably earlier than that for the board and committees of the board. But publicly, the board has had discussions and public presentations by the architect, by the interim business administrator, by the superintendent, and by the board members themselves 10 different times, and there's a list of all the dates that the board did discuss the bond. And the bond project is basically the same as it was from the beginning. It's 77% of our roofs. I'm sorry, the roof project, not the bond project. So all of the discussions concerning the roofs have been around the same project, which is roughly 420,000 square feet of roof replacement. The architect has been working on this also for a long period of time and has put estimates to each school. This is the breakdown of the estimate of the $13.6 million. The high school, as we've said, is our priority and is our largest project by far, and that's estimated at $4 million. The timeline: if the bond passes, we will authorize the architect to move ahead immediately with preparing bid specifications for the high school. We would also hope to have two other schools, bid specs prepared for two other schools so that we could complete them in the summer of 2013. All of the other roofs would be completed in the summer of 2014. The original timeline on the September 24th bond was to have all of the roof work done in the summer of 2013. But because of timing at this point, we don't have enough time to get all of those projects out to bid, so we'll be looking at probably 3 projects next summer. And what happens if the bond fails? These roofs are really in need of replacement. The high school, again, is a priority that has to be replaced. And when we say replace, what we mean is the existing roof has to be removed and an entire new roof put down. We may have to delay that to 2014 if the bond fails, and that's because we'll have to look to our existing reserve funds, our existing fund balance, and also our 2013-14 budget for funding. Reallocations would have to be made in order to cover those costs. So we'd be looking at reductions to programs and services. We would have to sustain those reductions for 2 to 3 years, depending on what fund balance and reserve funds we used in order to get all of the roofing projects done. So we'd be looking at probably into the 2016-17 budget with the reductions. And the reserve accounts that we had planned to use for other facility projects would have to be probably canceled or delayed. So if we're looking at $4 million for 13-14 budget for the high school, which, as I've said numerous times, is our priority, where would the impact come? The first impact would be to programs and services. It would increase class size at all levels. We'd be looking at electives and fine arts. We'd be looking at athletic programs. Our technology and STEM initiatives that we've recently started, we'd probably have to delay further, and maintenance to facilities. And the reason that we're highlighting these areas is because we're looking at non-mandated areas or areas of the budget where there's less mandates than others. There's some areas of the budget where we're so restricted by the state that there's only so much flexibility that we have. About 80% of our budget is in staff salaries and benefits, which means that many of the reductions would come from staffing reductions. We would be looking at teachers in every level at every school. Teachers do make up the biggest part of our staff, which is why we would be looking for reductions there. We'd be looking at reductions to counselors, certainly other areas of support, secretaries and paraprofessionals and custodians, administrators and librarians. And I think we've reminded the public several times already, but one more time won't hurt. The election is December 11th, and the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And we just urge everybody to vote. Does the board have any questions?
Questions or comments? I think, Dana, I'd emphasize from your presentation that whether or not the bond passes, the roofs are getting done. It's just a question of time frame and how painful that is to the school system, quite frankly, in terms of cutbacks from the operating budget to fund the roofs. I would hope that in that scenario, we actually do the high school next summer, and we just look immediately to the next operating budget with the resulting circumstances you listed. It's increased class sizes, it's cut back in programs, but the roofs do need to get done, and sometimes that gets lost in the conversation.
Good point.
Anyone else?
I might also add that, as Dana Sullivan pointed out, in the past, there has been state funding for bonds, and that hasn't been the case. So last week, Rich Matesic, Roseanne Kerstead, and I went and met with Senator Kane. Senator Kane has been very active for a long time, actually, on the Education Committee down in Trenton, so he is someone who really does understand the funding system. We certainly didn't have to let him know that there is no funding for school construction, whereas there used to be. He was very much aware of it. I wouldn't say that he promised that he was going to be able to fix that or change it. He understands why we would like that, because if the state was able to restore some of that funding for bonds, how that translates is it translates into helping the taxpayers in Westfield. And Senator Kane certainly was mindful of that, understood the predicament we were in, understood why we are working towards, why we are funding this through, attempting to fund this through bonds. I'm sure he will keep that in mind as he does his work in Trenton. And having said that, it's not as though he promised that he was going to be able to change any of the funding for us.
Yes.
So obviously, if you look at these cuts, they are very troubling. I didn't see the number in here tonight, but we've used the number previously that we would be cutting 50 staff. And if you times that by 3, because the cuts will continue over 3 years, I mean, we could be potentially talking about 150 staff. Is that accurate?
No.
So go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, you'd cut the 50 and then you would have to keep those cuts for 3 years. You
I
wouldn't
see.
have to cut more every year, but you wouldn't be able to reinstate those positions for at least 3 years.
I see, so we would just maintain those cuts for 3 years.
Right, so if you increased class size to 25, let's say, at the elementary level, that would stay for 3 years before you could reduce them again.
So I just think for parents, it's really hard to get passionate about a roof. It's just not a sexy thing. But I think that they can get passionate about all of these programs. I mean, the fine arts programs, the athletic programs, these are the activities that kids really engage kids in school. That's what they really want to go to school for. Plus the class size at the elementary level, it could be devastating. And I just think that what we should do as a board for the next 2 weeks is to communicate to as many parents as we can, just to let them know how important this vote is.
Thank you.
I guess just to piggyback on that a little bit, we had talked about at our last meeting, you know, how we felt those cuts, you know, several years ago, when $4 million was cut from the budget, and it was devastating. It really was, and it's so hard to look at having to make those cuts again, feeling that you know, it feels a little bit like we have finally gotten a little bit more on solid ground with being able to restore some of those positions, and how critical, you know, we felt how critical they were. We really felt it when we lost them. And to have been able to restore some of them has been such a positive, and an important piece at the element, the librarians, the art teachers, counselors. I mean, just pieces that we really cannot live without. So, again, just to lose that momentum now, it would just be heart-wrenching.
Just something else I want to point out that you brought up a good point, the cuts that were made in 2010. There were, I don't want to say they were easier, but to a certain extent there were some that were efficiencies that we could realize. So thank you. From duplicating costs, postage costs, those kind of things, just changing the way we do business. So those were the first things, of course, that were looked at and were implemented. That's going to be much harder this time. So as we go to the next round of reductions, you're starting from a much deeper place with reductions, because not all of those 4 million by any means were restored.
Right.
So it's just something to note.
Right. For example, one of the staffing ones that was cut and has not been restored are librarians. Now, we had cut librarian at every level, at least one every level. We were able to restore one at the intermediate, but we still have librarians serving multiple schools at the elementary. If we have to make additional cuts to the library, you're starting from that basis. And yes, so it is much more difficult because we were lucky we were able to restore one librarian, but that was all. And so we're starting from a lower basis and we'll be cutting from there.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Anything else on facilities? Nope. With that, we go to long-range planning. Jenny? Anything?
No report.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to policies. Roseanne?
I'd like to make a motion to ask the board's approval of a revised district 2012-2013 school calendar as per attached. Can I have a second?
Second.
And let's open it up for discussion.
Should I explain it? Okay. So, we had spoken at the last meeting that because our middle schools and high school had lost 8 days of school during the storm and the aftermath, and our elementary schools had lost 9 days of school, that we needed to take a look at our calendar. We needed to make sure our students have 180 days of school. So we did it in 2 stages. At the last meeting, we looked at how we could make up those days. We had already made up two at the intermediate and high school by students coming in during what had been teachers' convention, opening up on 2 days where we would have been closed, 1 day for the elementary. We had, luckily, 4 days already in the calendar. So our intermediate schools needed 2 more days to make 180 days, and our elementary schools needed 3 days. Okay. So our first focus was on getting those 2 days first. And what was approved last meeting was that for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day on January 19th, that there would be a 4-hour session for students. And at the last meeting, I talked in some detail about the fact that there is a long-standing celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King's life as well as his beliefs in Westfield. That is important. So for that reason, that day is a 4-hour session so that the students, the staff, and parents are going to be able to attend that ceremony, which again has been in place in Westfield for quite a long time. Then the next day that was on the calendar was President's Day, which is February 18th. Also certainly an important day, but honestly, like most other days, like Veterans Day and other important days, as we heard earlier in an announcement, our students did commemorate Veterans Day, and you can do that when you're in school. President's Day can be commemorated while students are in school. So President's Day will be a full session for students on February 18th. Now those 2 days get us to 180 days. But we're still a month away from the start of winter, and it's snowing outside as we sit here and as we conduct this meeting. So it is my strong recommendation that we now add 3 snow days to this year's school calendar. Last week I worked with the Policies Committee and we reviewed the calendar. There are not too many options and not one of them is a perfect option. There are 3 options for adding back 3 snow days. There is the spring break, Memorial Day, and the end of the school year. The spring break includes 2 religious holidays. Tuesday is Passover and Friday is Good Friday. If we were to open for the other 3 days, you could do that, but the students then would not have any break from January through Memorial Day. And for a number of reasons, and including educational reasons, that really is not optimal. That's a long time for anyone to go. Memorial Day could have provided 1 day, but just 1 day, which didn't really answer the issues. So since we need 3 days, we next looked at the end of the school year. Now, we're finally fortunate in something with this calendar. I think that's the first time we were fortunate about this calendar. And that is that our school year, as it was planned, ends early on June 20th. So there is room at the end of that to push back the school year. There still is a problem that remains because it impacts graduation, but it is relatively, other than graduation, which I'll get to in a moment, it is relatively easy to move back the end of the school year for grades K to 11, and we can certainly plan for graduation. So after reviewing the pros and cons of all of the options, it is our recommendation to move high school graduation to Tuesday, June 25th, and add any used snow days to the end of the current school year. So, if all 3 snow days are used, grades 6 through 12 would end school on June 25th, and kindergarten through 5th grade would end on June 26th to make up the extra days that the extra day that these students were out during the storm. And if fewer than 3 days are used, those days would be subtracted from the end of the year, but graduation would remain on June 25th, regardless of that. I think those are the main points of the.
Any comments or questions? Ann?
So I'm just curious, when would finals be? Do we know that at the high school?
We would have to wait a bit more to determine that and get a sense of, when. You'd have to keep an eye on the calendar. If we use 3 snow days in January, you probably have a pretty good sense of when your exams have to be. If you get through a little bit later in the year, at a certain point, probably in April, when it's usually, not always, usually safe, then you'd have to be very specific as to when those exams would be.
Right, because I'm just saying, instructionally, once finals are over,
oh, sure,
school is kind of over.
Oh, sure.
I mean, so even if we even if we say it's a day,
Right.
I'm not sure.
If you push back the school year, you would push back the exams to match that. Right. The high school will have a bit of a problem if we don't have snow. It's not looking as though that's likely, to tell you the truth. But if we don't have snow, school will end, students will be off, and then there's graduation. But we have time to fix that. And again, sitting here in November, the way the weather has been recently, I think it's a pretty good guess that we're going to need at least some of those days. Mm-hmm. So the high school is going to have to, especially the high school, is going to have to keep an eye on that. Again, exams will move back if we add days, and we'll make any changes, because you're right, we don't just want students to come in and waste time. There are days that are going to be used for instruction.
I think it might also be worth letting everyone know that the Policies Committee did spend some time looking at the December holiday break. It wasn't that we didn't consider it, but I think the consensus was that we were worried that attendance would be so low as to make instruction not the most feasible option. So I just didn't want everyone to think we overlooked that break. That was part of our discussion, but it just didn't seem the most feasible of the ones that we had.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah. Does anyone from the public wanted to comment on the calendar situation? Yes.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Vertina Graves. I live at 350 Livingston Street. I'm a longtime resident of Westfield, New Jersey. My father graduated from Westfield High School in 1940. As a matter of fact, this was the high school. I graduated in 1965, and I have 3 children that attended the school system, and I'm proud to say they're doing well. I'm here to comment on the revised calendar because of the terrible hurricane. I feel that schools should be closed to honor King Day. Many Americans fought for that holiday. Martin Luther King represented the good in all people, Catholic priests, Jewish rabbis, college students, and even Sunday school children risked their lives for justice. This year, President Obama will be inaugurated on King Day, and that would be a glorious time for some families to spend time together to watch the ceremony, or even to go to Washington. To me, King Day is personal. Upon returning from World War II, my father had to take a bus through the South to get back home. And he was carrying heavy gear from the Army, and the bus driver made him walk through the crowd to the back of the bus. And he said there was a sign on the bus that said, in the time of emergency, a bus driver can act as a police officer. And the bus drivers did carry guns. Personally, when I was about 10 years old, I went to visit my great-grandmother in Lawrenceville, Virginia. My uncle took me to a soda shop, and we sat down, and my uncle ordered 2 ginger ales. And I still remember, it was a pretty young waitress, and she took the cup and she put the lid on. My uncle said, "Oh, no, don't bother. You don't have to put the lid on. We'll drink it here." And she said politely, "No, you can't." It was the law then. So I feel that a couple of days can be taken from the spring break, and also that the school year can be extended, because I think Martin Luther King Day should be celebrated and should be honored in the town of Westfield. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think you very eloquently stated why it is important that we do honor the day, and no question of that. And again, I think you should be one of the speakers this year, is what I think. There weren't any good choices. And again, I think with opening, I think our students can hear stories such as yours or your family stories and learn. So no disrespect is meant at all. And I've already spoken to the principals to talk about the fact that we need to take advantage of that opportunity, that the students are in the school, and there are stories such as yours, but other ones also, and some history that we need to make sure our students do know, so that they don't forget why that day is off. And again, I do think you expressed the reasons for it pretty eloquently.
Could I say something else? I hope
If you-
principals do participate.
Would you mind, just so we could hear you? Thank you.
I hope all the principals do participate, because I was a judge on the Martin Luther King committee, and I noticed some schools, McKinley, my whole school, had a lot of participation. Franklin, I don't want to name all of them because it varied from year to year, but some schools had many children that participated in the activity, and other schools had very few. So I think the communication needs to be there, so that the principals realize it is important that all the students participate. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would agree.
Dr. Dolan, perhaps we can get the word to the principals to have TVs and have the inauguration available if, for some students to watch. I hadn't realized that it was the same day, and I think that might be a good idea. To at least certainly in the younger grades, if TVs are in the classroom, then maybe they take a few minutes and watch the inauguration, which I think is a good thing anyway, historically.
So I would say certainly for a number of, that is possible. I wouldn't say we'd do it across the board and everyone would do
Right.
that, but certainly it makes sense at some age levels and some subjects, of course, too, where it's related to it. So sure, absolutely.
Any other comments or questions on the calendar?
Rich Matesic,
Yes.
Ann Carey,
Yes.
Jane Clancy,
Yes.
Mark Friedman,
Yes.
Roseanne Kirsted,
Yes.
Ginny Lights,
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg,
Yes.
Mitchell Slater.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to ask the board's approval of the Uniform State Memorandum of Agreement between education and law enforcement officials for the 2012-2013 school year.
Second.
And I think Dr. Dolan's just going to talk a little bit about what that is.
Certainly. So this document has been in effect for, I believe it's about 2 decades, if I'm not mistaken. And so every year, the Westfield Public Schools enter into an agreement with both the Westfield Police Department and also the Union County Prosecutor's Office. And the document takes all of the various regulations and codes that govern the rights of students, the law, the rights of police officers, et cetera, puts it all in one place. It's also an opportunity where we speak with law enforcement and go over any changes that have been in the law. For example, last year was the first time this document included the requirements regarding bullying and anti-bullying efforts. So it summarizes all of those in one document. So when issues do come up, both the police department and the schools have the opportunity to reference and find the correct guidance. Again, it's been in place for about 20 years in districts and towns throughout the state, and I actually think it's a great document because it does help put a complex issue into one document that everyone can reference.
Comments or questions?
Rich Matasik?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kirsted?
Yes.
Ginny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion and ask the board's approval that the board affirm the superintendent's decision on 13J01 for the reasons set forth therein.
Second.
Rich Matasik?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kirsted?
Yes.
Ginny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
Anything else? All right, thank you. Curriculum, instruction, and programs. Ann?
Thank you. I would ask the board to approve for second reading the following curricula under World Language, Italian 1, 2, and 4. Have a second? Roseanne? We have previously discussed this, so if there are no questions, we can vote.
Rich Matasik?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kirsted?
Yes.
Ginny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
Anything else? Yeah?
No.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll turn to finance, and I would ask the board to consider finance motions 1 through 7, as well as addendum finance motions number 8, and what I will refer to as number 9, the addendum to travel expenses in the finance section.
Second.
Thank you. I would like to note finance motion number 3, which is the acceptance of gifts from the Westfield Coalition of the Arts to be used for the following purposes: a monetary gift for the purchase of a half-size string bass, German bow, and carrying case for smaller elementary students, and a monetary gift, a grant allowing a music arranger from one of our studios to write arrangements of popular music for elementary string orchestra students. And we thank you very much for those gifts. Are there any questions or comments on the motions? Ginny?
Could you explain number 8, please?
Sure. So number 8,
The addendum.
yeah, is the bank account resolution. Do you want to take it?
Yes, that's just, originally we had Rich, myself, and the treasurer all as authorized signer on the investment account. There's really not a need to have 3 signers on that, and actually at Mr. Matasik's request, we're just reducing it to 2 people.
Is that the only change?
Yes.
No change in the bank designations?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Rich Matasik?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kirsted?
Yes.
Ginny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
All right. With that, I would ask the board to note the notes for the record. And I would turn to legislation if there's any report. Ann?
Ginny and I are attending the Garden State Coalition meeting tomorrow. Are you
I
coming
believe
with
I
us?
am as well, yes.
Oh, and Dr. Dolan is coming with us. So we will have a report next time.
Thank you. Any unfinished business? Go on.
So at the last board meeting, we talked a bit about lessons learned from the storm, and I just wanted to do a bit of a follow-up regarding that. So as we discussed last week, we spent time looking at lessons learned from Hurricane or Superstorm Sandy, and have been working to prepare for the next storm, even while understanding that the next storm will provide different challenges. So some of what we've done, the Facilities Committee discussed the need for generators, and we'll have a follow-up meeting regarding this. Administrators have begun organizing additional staff contact information for when phones and internet are down. When the Policy Committee looks to the next calendar, we will look to include 4 snow days. The Honeywell alert system worked well for those parents and staff members who had signed up several devices. So we have communicated with all parents and staff, suggesting that when they register their home, and suggest that they register both their home and their cell phones for voicemail and text, as well as email addresses, because in every phase of the storm, at least one of those was working for everyone. At the Ad Hoc Technology Committee, we also spoke about how effective Twitter turned out to be during the storm aftermath. We have now established a Twitter account for the school district. It is Westfield NJK12, and it can be used as an additional way to communicate with members of the public. Additionally, the Ad Hoc Technology Committee discussed redundancies for technology and off-site storage of data, and when we have our next meeting, we'll be discussing that again. And something else very important regarding the storm. All of our schools and administration building have been involved in efforts to help those who have been seriously affected by Hurricane Sandy. While some fundraising and organizing is still evolving, already some inroads have been made. Many of our own staff members have been displaced as a result of the storm. And we have individually and as a group reached out a helping hand. We are also reaching out to help our neighbors here in Westfield. Our elementary schools are fundraising for the United Fund of Westfield Sandy Relief. And not too far beyond our own town, there are schools in the shore area that have been adopted by McKinley, Roosevelt, Edison, and Westfield High School. More specifics about these and other activities will become available through our schools' websites, parent-teacher organizations, and our student government associations.
Thank you.
I would just add to what Dr. Dolan said. First of all, about Twitter, thank you very much. The Twitter feed is up and running. I see 106 followers and look forward to having every parent in town joining us here on Twitter to get the most recent information. So thank you very much for getting that done. At our technology meeting, we heard a presentation from Mr. Pinero on a little bit what's been going on with some of our master technology teachers, and I just wanted to update just a couple of highlights. This is something we'll give more information later on, probably in the winter in a separate superintendent's report. But the master technology teachers have been very busy. Maintaining blogs themselves for the staff to use. Each technology teacher has their own weblog, and they're using these to provide a narrative about what each teacher is using in the classroom, and it's becoming an idea exchange and information and resources for all of them. And one very important area is professional development. Workshops and courses are offered during prep periods, lunch, and after school. There's a specific unit design incorporating technology supported by in-class modeling and coaches. Some of those programs that they're doing include Smartboard Basics, social media for professional development, presentation tools, Google Docs, how to project using iPads. One of the things that I think is very interesting they're doing is something called Apptastic Thursday, which is a review of the basics of identified iPad apps and how to incorporate each of them in the classroom. Things like Evernote, ScreenChomp, Sketch, podcasting, and specific math applications. And each week, each of the teachers are coming into these programs to learn more Apple actually gave a presentation in the high school, I believe it was last month as well, had a lunch and learn to help specifically. So they're very busy. We really love what the master technology teachers are up to, and we're excited to hear more and tell you more about it later this winter.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Any other unfinished business? New business? Ad hoc committee reports. Mitch, anything from you?
No, I think we've covered it.
All right, anyone else? Liaison reports. Anyone? Yes.
I have just one. On November 15th, I attended the Westfield Memorial Library Board of Trustees meeting, and I just wanted to note that they implemented the suggestions that were made by Paul and his staff for helping consumers of the library that have kids in the elementary schools identify appropriate leveled readings for the new curriculum. So there's some notices up by the computers so that if a parent comes and they have a specific book in mind, or they just kind of want to peruse what books might be appropriate within their child's reading level, there's instructions for how they can do that on the web, and then the staff of the library has also been trained to how to help them when those questions come to them. So that was a great joint effort, and everyone seems to be excited about the result, and it'll only benefit the students as well. So, great.
Any other reports?
Yes, on Thursday, November 15th, Gretchen and I attended the PTC general meeting. Dr. Dolan and Dana Sullivan were there to talk about the bond request and the state of the roofs and our need for raising funds to replace them.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. With that, I will recognize the public for questions and or comments on any topic. Seeing no one come to the podium, I will note that we do have a private session tonight, after which we will have a goal-setting workshop. I'd ask the board to approve the following resolution. Resolved that the Board of Education moves into private session for the purpose of discussing matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, personnel, pending or anticipated litigation, and pending or anticipated contract negotiations. And be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. Have a second. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained?